So I think it's a fascinating question. And to be clear, I don't know for sure what the answer is, but I think there's a lot that we can learn from the history of what happened with software companies, because in a lot of ways, I see sort of the software startup ecosystem as being sort of 10 years ahead of the biotech startup ecosystem in terms of just like the way it has evolved. Software companies started very strongly clustered around hubs. If you were starting an internet company in 2007 and you weren't in Silicon Valley or maybe New York or maybe Boston, you were at a huge disadvantage. And very few companies started out of a couple of dominant tech hubs succeeded in that era. Since then, we've seen the tech world decentralize gradually at first. From 2010 to 2020, I would argue that it decentralized gradually, where there ended up being more companies popping up in the middle of the country and in Austin, and more countries popping up in LATAM and India and throughout Europe. And then when COVID hit in March of 2020, everything accelerated enormously. And we probably got 10 years of acceleration on that trend packed into a single year, where now, of course, it's increasingly common for software companies to be fully distributed. A large percentage of the most recent YC batch in a survey we did said that they were planning to be fully distributed forever. A large percentage of even the larger YC companies that previously had a physical office pre-COVID have given up their lease permanently and committed to being completely remote forever. So clearly, in the case of software companies, the trend is towards less centralization in startups hubs, which isn't to say that there's no centralization anymore. Certainly there still are startup hubs, but that is the clear inexorable trend. Now, for biotech, there's one future that you can imagine in which it follows exactly the same path as the tech companies, where it started in hubs and then it just like completely decentralizes and there are remote biotechs everywhere. But there's a wrinkle that may prevent that from happening, which is that most biotech companies still have a physical lab space where people come in and do physical work that really cannot be done remotely. And so I think the question of whether biotech will decentralize away from these hubs really hinges on the question of what happens to the future of physical lab space. There is, of course, a sub-trend that is happening, which is towards the rise of fully virtual biotechs. We have a YC company from about a year ago called Pardes, which is building an antiviral drug for COVID. And they are a fully virtual biotech. They have raised gajillions of dollars and have a big team and have a ton of progress. They've done an incredible amount of experimental work. And they like to say the company does not own a single pipette. It has been 100% virtualized and done by CROs. And so I think, and as a result, they're able to hire a fully distributed team and not have any central office. So I think if companies like Pardes are the future, then I expect to see things going the same direction as the tech companies, where they will largely decentralize away from biotech hubs and go fully remote. But for the ones that have physical lab space and choose to keep their experimental work in-house, I think it's going to be difficult to get outside of a small number of biotech hubs, because you just can't get a critical mass of the expertise needed to do that work anywhere else.